On October 25, 2023, the town of Lewiston, Maine, became the scene of one of the deadliest mass shootings in U.S. history. 18 people were killed and dozens more were left with life-changing injuries, all at the hands of one man, Robert Card. This is Strawberry Inc., and today we're diving into the story of a tragedy that shocked the nation and the hunt in question: what drove a man like Robert Card to carry out such a horrific act? Robert Card, a 40-year-old Army reservist, had long been known for his service in the military. But behind the disciplined exterior, he was battling severe mental health issues that would eventually consume him. Those close to Card reported that he had been struggling with intense psychological turmoil, including hearing voices. It was this descent into madness that would ultimately culminate in a night of terror. By all accounts, Card had kept a low profile in the days leading up to the attack, but there were warning signs, unsettling behavior that friends and family dismissed. For those who knew him, it became clear that Card was deteriorating, but they didn't know how far that decline would go. The night of October 25th started like any other. People gathered at a local bowling alley and a nearby bar in Lewiston, Maine. It was supposed to be an evening of fun and relaxation until Robert Card walked into both locations with a military-style assault rifle. He opened fire without warning, shooting at anyone in his path. At the bowling alley, chaos erupted as people scrambled to escape. The horror continued at the bar, where Card showed no mercy, taking the lives of those he encountered. 18 people died in what seemed like an instant. Dozens more were injured, some critically. The town of Lewiston was forever changed by that night, an act of pure evil that left a community in shock. After the attack, Robert Card fled the scene. Authorities launched an immediate manhunt, but Card remained on the run. For days, the people of Lewiston were in fear, waiting for the moment when the suspect would be apprehended. During this time, the nation held its breath, desperate for answers about what motivated Card to carry out such a massacre. His deteriorating mental state, or was there something more at play? Something darker, driving him to an extreme. The shootings left 19 people dead, including himself, and 14 injured. Robert Card then fled and headed towards a nearby river. 2 days later, he was found dead in this river area, and the remains were confirmed through his ID. His body was examined at the Androscoggin County Coroner's Office, and it was determined that he had suffered blood loss, leading to a slow and painful death. Card's cause of death was established as a self-inflicted gunshot wound, but even with his death, the questions remained. The survivors of the shooting would carry the weight of that night with them forever. In the wake of the tragedy, the families of those lost were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. Robert Card's actions had forever changed the course of many lives, and the community of Lewiston was left to process what happened. Card's family and mental health professionals attempted to piece together what went wrong. How could a man who had once served in the military, a man trusted by his peers, snap in such a violent way? The gunman's deteriorating mental health was a key part of the investigation, and it raised serious questions about mental illness and its role in mass shootings. But despite these efforts to understand, there were no easy answers. Robert Card's mass shooting remains one of the deadliest in U.S. history, and though the world may never fully understand why he did it, we are left with a scar that will never fade. The 14 injured victims were treated at the Central Maine Medical Center and released weeks later. This was also the hospital where the deceased ones had been pronounced dead. The 18 deceased victims were identified as Peyton Brewer Ross, Ronald Morin, and Tricia Asseline. Arthur Scout, Joseph Walker, Jason Walker, and Joshua Seal. Aaron Young, William Young, and Brian McFarlane. William Brackett, Keith McNear, and Thomas Conrad. Stephen Vozella, Max Hathaway. Michael Deslariers, Robert and Lucille Violet. Peyton's funeral visitation and celebration of life ceremony was held at the American Legion Hall in Booth Bay on November 4th. His body is believed to be buried in one of his family's properties. Ronald Morin's visitation was held at the Pinetts Dillingham and Lynch Funeral Home in Lewiston on November 2nd, and his mass the following day at the nearby Basilica of St. Peter and Paul Upper Church. Ronald was afterwards buried at their Switzerland Road Cemetery. Tricia's visitation was held at the Fortin Group Funeral Home in Auburn. On November 2nd, the following day, Mass was held at the East Auburn Baptist Church. There was a private committal held there right after. She was afterwards buried at the nearby Graceland Memorial Park. Arthur Stout's celebration of life was held on November 5th at the Pinett Dillingham and Lynch Funeral Home. The day before, there was a private visitation held at this home. He was afterwards cremated and the ashes were given to his family. Joseph's visitation was held at the East Auburn Baptist Church on November 17th, and his celebration of life the following day at Slider's Sports Pub in the Lewiston Mall. He was afterwards cremated and the ashes were given to his family. Jason Walker's visitation was held on November 11th at the Fortin Group Funeral Home in Auburn, right after, followed by a committal ceremony at the same place. He was then buried at the Pleasant Hill Cemetery in Sabatis. Joshua's visitation was held in the afternoon of November 8th at the Clark's Pond Parkway in South Portland, and in that evening at the same place his celebration of life was held. He was afterwards cremated and the ashes were given to his family. Aaron Young and his father William's visitation was held at the Hope Baptist Church in the morning of November 10th. Later on in that day, their mass was done here as well. Both were afterwards cremated and the ashes were given to their family. Brian's celebration of life was held at the Funeral Alternatives home in Lewiston on November 18th. The day before, there was a private visitation here. He was afterwards cremated and the ashes were given to his family. William Brackett's visitation was held on November 4th at the Brackett Funeral Home in Brunswick. Later in the day, there was a committal held here. He was afterwards buried at the Pine Grove Cemetery, also in Brunswick. The following day, a celebration of life was held at the West Bath Firehouse. Keith's family did not feel capable of having a visitation where they had to see his dead body. Therefore, they chose just to have a celebration of life in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where he was from, on November 28th at the Southport Raw Bar. He was afterwards cremated and the ashes were given to his family. Thomas Conrad's visitation was held on November 1st at the Plummer Funeral Home in Augusta. Then on November 4th, his mass was held at the Community Baptist Church of Sabatis. He was then buried at the Maine Veterans Memorial Cemetery in Augusta on Mount Vernon Road. Stephen's visitation was held at the Chandler Funeral Home in South Paris on November 10th. He was buried the following day at the St. Catherine and Siena Cemetery in the town of Norway, and there was afterwards a celebration of life at Oxford Hills High School. Max Hathaway's visitation was held at the Crossman Funeral Home of Lisbon Falls on November 4th, and later on in the day, there was a celebration of life held here. He was afterwards cremated and the ashes were given to his family. Michael's visitation was held on November 5th at the Fortin Group Funeral Home of Auburn. The following day, a celebration of life was held at the same place. He was afterwards buried at the Pleasant Hill Cemetery in Sabatis. Lastly, the visitation of Robert Violet and his wife Lucielle was held on November 6 at the Fortin Group Funeral Home of Auburn. The following day, their mass was held at the East Auburn Baptist Church. Afterwards, there was a private family committee at the church. They were afterwards cremated and the ashes were given to their family. Then, there was Robert Card. He had a private visitation, committal, and celebration of life, all at the Fortin Group Funeral Home of Auburn on November 10th. He was afterwards buried at the nearby Layton Cemetery. This is Strawberry Ink, and thank you for listening to the story of Robert Card, the Lewiston Massacre, and the aftermath that continues to haunt the survivors and the families of those who perished. Have a good rest of your day.